Hey, everybody, it is the coolest Reconstructionist, Eric Brown and Phil Relli, and welcome to episode number 45 of the one and only show, bringing you tips and tricks for working vehicle collision cases from the best experts in the industry. Today's topic is your data is only as good as your expert. So hold on tight. Here we go. Before I finish this intro, another life will be lost to a vehicle crash, and the $500 billion economic impact of vehicle crashes will only keep growing. Are you an attorney, expert witness, police officer, or insurance adjuster in charge of negotiating, investigating, or litigating vehicle collision cases? If so, then you're in the right place. The Expert Angle podcast was created for you because we believe that the industry must evolve, grow, and get better daily. And the only way to do that is by building the best team of experts possible to ensure that these crashes are handled efficiently, accurately, and honestly in order to get justice for the victims. We're Eric Brown and Phil Relli, and this is the Expert Angle. Welcome back to the show, everyone. This episode of the Expert Angle podcast is brought to you by Virtual Crash Accident Reconstruction Software. If you are tired of having to purchase, upkeep, and run multiple programs during an investigation, Virtual Crash is the cure. With Virtual Crash, you can build 3D environments using your actual scene data. You can simulate, animate, and create awesome visuals. You can also use the new momentum analysis tool for vehicle motion. Basically, Virtual Crash is the complete accident reconstruction software solution. Visit vcrashusa.com today to download your free trial or schedule a live one-on-one demonstration. All right, Phil, here we go. Another day, another dollar. Hopefully some spicy conversation coming at you because we have a returning guest with us today. Do you want to take a guess at who that guest is? Anybody watching the YouTube channel, they're cheating. They can obviously see who it is. But for those of you tuning in on the audio podcast, take a guess, Phil. Who's our special guest today?
Kurt Busch.
You know, that would be fun, wouldn't it? I wonder how we could get him on here.
That would be a blast. I'm guessing Steve Schmit.
Yeah, but if we can't get Kurt Busch, I feel like a close second, like right there, neck and neck.
Yeah,
I feel like this guest here, he may be right there. What do you think?
I'd say you're right. I'm going with it.
Okay, I like it. So here we go. Returning for a two-peat. Not many people have been on here for a two-peat, but he sure has. So here's Steve Schmit coming back from PSP. Steve, we appreciate you coming back, man, and hanging out with us.
Absolutely. I actually feel like I would rather listen to Kurt Busch talk for a little bit, but
see,
I'll try and fill in as best I can.
I would rather listen to pretty much anybody talk than Phil, but it is what it is. We got to make do with what we got. So But no, so we have kind of spiraled down the rabbit hole here a little bit over the last couple of weeks. And so you two got together and posed this idea, and it got forced upon me, as everything else does in my life, because everybody just exercises their will upon me, I guess. But it is what it is, so it's fine. But no, this is a good topic to go down, talking about, because I feel like with the introduction, and let's just start here with the introduction of EDR data, the quote unquote black boxes inside the cars, right? What are you guys seeing in PA? Because to me, it seems like everybody's reaching out, especially the attorneys, and they're like, hey, I need this car downloaded. And if it's not downloadable, like they're just ready to throw in the towel. They're like, I guess we don't have anything to go off of. Completely forgetting that we've been reconstructing crashes long before EDR data was ever, prevalent in vehicles.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've been doing reconstructions long before we were getting any kind of electronic data out of cars and commercial vehicles. I know it's the information that everybody seems to want to go to, especially the attorneys, which is good information. It's great, the amount of data that you can get out of these vehicles. But it's not the only information. I mean, we can get other information from other units, GPS or dash cams that are in the vehicles, but we can go back to just a good old fashioned, use the physical evidence and come up with a reconstruction and work it that way. And then use the EDR data to help validate your initial findings from the evidence.
Damn it. Steve just stole my thunder. I was just going to hit on that point of, even if all the vehicles are downloadable, I'm just guessing here. That's probably what like your unit does, right? You guys just go out and download the cars and then that's it. You don't do anything else to validate the data or anything. You just 100% trust whatever electronic data is in the vehicle, right?
If that is all we did, that would be great, because that would make my life so much easier and get my job so much quicker. But no, I mean, that's just one piece of the puzzle. Like, it's just one little piece there, and using the EDR data, from the different sensing modules is great. I mean, that's good data. But not only do we have to validate that data itself, because I don't want to ever take, what's coming out of a module as gospel. We got to validate that as well against our physical evidence, our dynamics of the crash. And when you get multiple vehicles involved, you can use, the EDR data from one vehicle to validate against the other when you're looking at things like delta V, closing speeds. So, I think that's important. It's good data to have, but certainly it's not the end all be all. Like, I never would want to take that data and just say, hey, this is what it says. They're doing 120 miles an hour, and that's what they're doing, with no validation from the physical evidence.
Yep. Now we have in an upcoming show, and I want to take a straw poll here with Phil here in just a second too. But, so it sounds like, Phil, we have a special guest that is going to be coming on here. Hopefully, I don't want to give away who it is, but I will tell you that his name at least starts with a K and it ends with an ent. But he's going to come on, I think, and talk a little bit about EDRs. But let me straw poll here from you two. If you work all of your math, so you do all your momentum and everything, and work all the physical evidence, and the speeds that you get don't match the EDR speeds recorded in the vehicle, and you send your math to get double checked, somebody else peer reviews it, they're like, yep, everything looks good. Which one do you trust, Steve?
I think I look at both of them and try to figure out what might have gone wrong. Why don't they match up? Is it something that I'm maybe misinterpreting with my evidence? Or is it something that the EDR data is misinterpreting because of some particular circumstance with the way the dynamics are, the way that vehicle is moving? Or in the case of commercial vehicles, or even EDR data from passenger vehicles, was it programmed properly for tire size, or rear axle ratios for how that truck is geared if we're talking commercial vehicles? And maybe that's why I'm reporting speeds incorrectly. But I think you got to really get down to looking at the parameters that are in that EDR data and why it's reporting what it is. And maybe there's some special circumstance that we're not seeing, and a wheel slip or something like that, and go from there.
Yep. Phil, which one, man? What do you think?
I'm trusting my work. I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to the EDR and see if I can identify where there's the difference and why there's the difference. Especially, it depends on what the difference is. I mean, if you're talking, I'm calculating 57 to 62 and EDR is 96 mile an hour. There is a huge difference there. So you're going to go back and retool and double check. But at the end of the day, my work is my work. As long as you're everything you're doing is sound, solid. There's certain, to what Steve said, there's certain dynamics taking place during the collision event. I guess I want to go back a couple of minutes here.
No, you can't. The past is the past. It's gone, brother.
No, we're reliving the past here. No, the thing that frustrates me is EDR, whether it's whether we're talking about cars or we're talking about heavy trucks, it's out there, and I see such a underutilization or minimal attempts to go after that data, whether it's some BS excuse of, well, we don't think we need it, or we're not worried about that. That's not part of what we're looking at. It's there. That's like going to a stabbing and finding a gun on the floor, not picking up the gun because it's a stabbing event, not a shooting event. So we're going to leave the gun and take the knife. I don't get it. I don't know why. And we're seeing it across the country. It's not just something here in Ohio. It's everywhere. So I don't know if it's laziness or not really understanding what the module or what the information that you can get. But irregardless, not going after it, I think, is ridiculous. So shame on you if you're not doing it from an investigator stance.
And it's odd because we field that question from clients and potential clients almost daily of, well, do you think we need an EDR download? The crash was a year ago, or it was a car versus pedestrian or something like that. And I'm like, if the car's equipped with it, and Steve, you tell me what you guys do over there in your unit, but like our unit here in our county, if it's equipped with a module, we're downloading it. I don't care if we think that there's an event or not. I don't care. If there's a module in the car, we're going to take a peek and do our due diligence to at least see what's in it.
Oh, absolutely. If that information, if there's the possibility that information is there, we're absolutely going to include that on the search warrant when we inspect those vehicles and download that data. And there's more times than I can count on one hand that I've said it beforehand. I guarantee you we're not going to get any data. Just based on the dynamics of the crash, that occasionally most of them have been, pedestrian crashes. And I included on the search warrant, though, because that vehicle is supported. I download it, and wouldn't you know it, I have a non-deployment event. And it matches, it matches the ignition cycles and the speed, the dynamics of the vehicle that I've already kind of calculated out to begin with. And there's that, extra information that helps validate what my, reconstruction already kind of showed me or told me, and that information's there. I mean, if you're not collecting information that's potentially out there, I almost want to say it's that you're almost kind of being a fool by not going and trying to seek out that potential information that, I never want to have to go into court and explain why, we didn't download the vehicle, and have the opposing side say, well, we did, and guess what we found on it. Mm-hmm. And now you're trying to, especially if that doesn't necessarily agree with, the reconstruction. Well, where's the difference here then?
Well, the thing is, the car is a silent witness. It can give you a written statement. If it's a supported vehicle, it'll give you a written statement, and you may have a non-deployable or a non-deployment event, but that, like you said, that very well may, just because it doesn't have data in it, that actually can validate your reconstruction. Your reconstruction validates the information. So, so that's one thing. So I'm with you. You're a fool, I think, if you don't go after it. And if it's an issue where maybe your prosecutor or your client doesn't understand it, then have that conversation with your client, or if you're in law enforcement, the prosecutor, and educate them a little bit. I mean, I think sometimes there's people in certain positions that believe because they have a certain title that they seem to know it all. And that's just not right. That's just not correct. That's number one.
Are you referring to the title of owner of Crash Tech?
I wasn't going to say that.
Oh, okay. I was just saying it was implied.
And I'm with Steve too. And Eric and I know you agree. You don't want to be on the other side or sitting in the witness box testifying, and the other side produces it. I mean, there's no reason to not go after it. And number two, the other problem I find or see regularly is everybody gets that they flip as quickly as they can to the page where it talks about speed, don't look at anything before it, and they go all the way down to the bottom line and say, 1 second or, negative 1 second, it was at 75 mile an hour. Guys, that's not the speed. I mean, it's a portion of everything, but it's not the impact speed.
And one of the biggest things that gets me, and every time I sit in on one of Rick Ruth's EDR updates every year at our conference, read the data limitations. If we're talking about CDR data, so many people just, like you said, they just flip to, hey, that page that has the pretty graph with the speed and service brake and RPMs and steering angle, and they skip everything else. And one of the biggest things is read the data limitations. I mean, there might be 2-3 pages of it. And that might be a little boring to read through, but boy, there is some important stuff in there that might be vital to what you're seeing in your own data because of the way it's reporting.
Yep. Yeah, because your collision event could have actually started unfolding anywhere in that, 0 to -2 or -1.5 or whatever case may be. It's not at 0, not in all cases. So you can't just blanketly apply a 0 equals impact.
Right.
mentality.
And so real quick before we refine this down to move on to our specific topic today, but just remember a good rule of thumb here, especially for the police officers. So if you're in law enforcement, you're listening to this, I am telling you right now, right? Remember that if you have a car after a crash and you choose not to download it because whatever, the pedestrian only clips the mirror on the side of the car, gets knocked over, hits their head and dies. Let's just say theoretically, right? And you don't download that info and that car gets sold at auction and lost into oblivion or crushed or destroyed or something like that, right? Who gets the presumption that the evidence that you failed to collect benefits them?
Yeah.
It's the defendant.
Yeah.
They get the benefit of the doubt that there was data in there and that it benefits them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't get stuck in that situation and potentially lose a case just because you didn't want to take the time or your prosecutor didn't want to take the time to write a search warrant and wake a judge up.
Another one, we'll move on. I had another complaint. You asked me if I was spicy today, and I did have another complaint. And
you're wearing a bright red shirt, so that's what made me think of it. I was like,
it just aggravates me to no end, and there's no excuse for it, but it's just sheer laziness or avoidance of the truth. I don't know.
Yeah. Yep. So as we talked about EDR data and the accuracy of it and the importance of it and everything else, let's transition here and talk a little bit about, do trucks have EDR data and how accurate is it? And what can we learn from some of these trucks?
All right. So I want to start with this one real quick before I get to Steve. I hear this time and time again, and Steve, be interesting to hear your input from another state perspective. But Eric, I'm assuming, hopefully I'm correct in assuming that you have heard the same thing. There are a lot of, if you're in law enforcement, there's a lot of officers that hate commercial crashes. They hate dealing with trucks. I don't know if it's the intimidation because of the size or what, or it's just there's so much to do. There's so much into it. But at the end of the day, a crash is a crash. My gosh, the amount of crashes involving commercial trucks that don't get thoroughly investigated and getting into heavy truck EDR. Ooh.
I think it's twofold. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, which Phil points out I typically am wrong, but that's fine. Whatever. Yeah. So I believe that officers don't like commercial truck crashes for two reasons. One, in the academy, you don't spend a lot of time on trucks, right? They're big, they're noisy, they're smelly, and they're dirty. And we all want to keep our uniforms pretty, right? So we don't spend a lot of time on them. And then two, everything that you hear about a truck, right, is, oh, you can't look at their logbooks, right? You can't take their logbook, which is crap. We all know that's not true, but that's what you're taught in the academy because they're like, well, that's really for, the federal guys. And that's not the case. And the problem is nobody's ever, a lot of guys don't go on to more comprehensive training to learn.
Yep.
I don't know. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. I know in commercial PA, your guys at state police, pretty much you guys are the only people that can do trucks. I don't think your city guys are even allowed to really do anything with trucks, are they?
In PA, no. I mean, there are mix-up programs that are within the municipal departments as well. I mean, obviously the state police has a very large program. That's actually a specialized position within our own department that deals with just the enforcement side of commercial motor vehicles. But from our reconstruction side, truck crashes are their own animal. I mean, that's simply put. I mean, there's so many different moving parts, no pun intended there, that there's just a lot of stuff that goes on with trucks that really needs to be treated both the same and different at the same time as you would your normal passenger vehicle crashes. And it really does take a good amount of extra training. And there's a whole slew of different really good programs out there from different teaching institutions on commercial vehicle collision reconstruction and getting into, heavy trucks themselves and just the makeup and the nomenclature and the diagnostics. And really getting into that and figuring out what went wrong with those trucks. And then you have the EDR side of commercial vehicles, which is its own, totally own animal as well. There's a wealth of information that's recorded and stored on commercial vehicles.
And we like to, we are not, as you guys know, I mean, really, we have some of our main partners and sponsors that we talk about at the start and end of the show. But what the information that we give you guys in the middle of the show, we're not being paid for, nothing like that. We just like to give this to officers and to other investigators out there to try and make them better. But I will tell you the one program that I know, or two, that I can actually myself endorse. If you're an Ohio officer, I don't know if they'll take out of state officers, but you do have to be a police officer to go. I don't know if you guys have it in PA, but it's a program called CV Safe that the Ohio State Highway Patrol puts on. Okay. If you don't know a lot about trucks, go to that school. That's a great starting point. And you know, I do have to hand it to our Highway Patrol. That class, it's a 3-day class, completely free to law enforcement, and it's fantastic. Do you guys have a CV Safe in PA?
Not we have it's not the same thing, but I mean, we have our,
it's like an introduction to trucks and.
Yep. We have our own similar training program that's set up, in department, and it's a great program. And that gets into more of the enforcement side of trucks too. Yeah. But I mean, there really is
but it at least gets you comfortable with being around them.
Oh, absolutely. That's the big thing, is just people aren't comfortable with trucks because they don't understand the way they don't understand the way they operate. I mean, there's a totally different makeup. They're big. They have, air brake systems, they have different braking systems. There's obviously hydraulics as well, but I mean, there's just totally different components that people that even if they're comfortable with inspecting their passenger car, getting a commercial vehicle is, a whole different ball game.
Yeah. And so, go to that if you can. And then for anybody, private or law enforcement, I will tell you the one program I can endorse, and he's going to owe us some beers after this, Phil. But Tony Becker's course and Scott Skinner with Friends of Training Group is fantastic. Great Their heavy truck reconstruction. We went to it. Me, Phil, and Spencer from Crash Tech have been to it. And I will tell you, I will put my stamp of approval on that class all day, every day. It was a great class.
Absolutely. Those guys are phenomenal in the amount of truck knowledge that they have between them. I mean, it's great.
Yep.
And thinking,
stop it.
A lot of people,
I warned you about
that. A lot of people don't realize that, good majority of your commercial vehicles out there have the capability of being imaged, and there's data available, electronic data available. Same principle applies to the electronic data from your AKA black box that's in your car. It's the same thing with a truck. So there's all sorts of validation, or your work is going to validate the data, or the data is going to validate your work, however you want to look at it. If you're a half full or half empty person, but it's out there. Yeah. But I think because of unfamiliarity, people just don't know and don't go after it.
Yep. And I will tell you that the kit to just get the data, not to interpret it, not to do anything like that, but just to download it is actually really reasonably priced. You can pick them up on Amazon. I think it was $800, $600.
Yeah. I think we paid like 600.
You're talking about just for the hardware interface, like the Netflix?
Yeah. Super. And you can at least download the files and store them on your computer and get them to somebody that can read them.
Mm-hmm.
But
the big thing with, you mentioned, a lot of people don't realize the amount of data that's stored on commercial vehicles. And just like passenger vehicles, it's not there the data was never designed to be there for the purpose of crash reconstruction. In a passenger vehicle, that's there as part of the restraint system, the airbag control modules, the restraint control modules. They're there as part of the safety system of that car. But subsequently, they do record useful data, and when analyzed and validated properly, can be really useful in what we do. It's the same thing with commercial vehicles. There's a lot of information that's recorded for the purpose of the efficient operation of that truck. Mm-hmm. How it adheres to EPA guidelines for emissions. How it is designed or programmed to run the most efficiently for that fleet in that part of the country, how they have things geared and set up. But again, it records a lot of that useful data so that those fleet managers and those mechanics for those pieces of equipment can be constantly analyzing how their trucks are being used and tweak them and fine tune them if they need to. but it's great information for us as long as it's extracted properly. Because if we're doing a kind of a forensic imaging of that data using the original, like the OEM software, it's important that you have somebody that's trained to be able to actually do the download or the imaging on that truck. Because if not, you can end up wiping an ECM, wiping it clean, resetting parameters, resetting things.
You can write error codes into the computer.
You can put all kinds of fault codes and error codes on there that were never intended. Not to say that anybody does it maliciously, but if you're not trained properly in what you're doing or how you're imaging it, you can, subsequently put that stuff on there, and now you're basically either overwriting evidence or you're making new evidence that you shouldn't have in the first place.
Right.
And then getting people to, I think, like you mentioned, Phil, about having somebody be able to analyze the data to them. The stuff, obviously, the information we're pulling off these trucks is vastly different than the information we're pulling off of an airbag control module with the Bosch CDR system.
Yeah.
So we just have to know how to actually look at the data, what we're actually reading, and use it appropriately.
And you hit on a great point, Steve, that Eric and I over the years and Chris, we've talked about quite extensively. Careful about having the data and not being certified or properly trained to interpret it, and then issuing opinions on what the data is telling you. I have seen that a ton of times where, individual or company X images this car for client B, and the reconstructionist ends up throwing into their reconstruction report all this information about the data and what it means, and the timestamps and all this different stuff.
Could you imagine, woe is you if you try and interpret that data and all of a sudden somebody from another state that's really wide, kind of not real big from top to bottom, starts with a P, ends with a Sylvania, somebody maybe with like a name that sounds something like Solly or something like that. Imagine if he came into court and looked at the same data that you tried to interpret without any training. I think you're going to have a bad day in court.
I mean, you've got to be careful, but then again, that goes right back to what we talked about earlier, whether it's commercial truck or it's passenger car, light truck, the data is there, and people, because it is so widely accepted and it's so recognized to be, very, very, very good data, unless there's something that kicks it. 9 times out of 10, the data that you're seeing is good, credible information.
Well, and so real quick, Phil, let's just talk about in trucks, at least 4 places at least that I like to ask and tell attorneys to make sure that we're sending out some spoliation letters for on the private side. On the law enforcement side, 4 places I would at least look and write into a search warrant. And Steve, tell us if you guys do anything different. But the 4 things I want, right? I want the ECM module, obviously, right? I'm going to want the either the Bendix or the Wabco, which your braking system has its own modules in your trucks. I'm going to want the EDL data, your electronic data, all your logs and everything that are electronic in your newer trucks. Now, if you go older, they may not have to even be equipped with them. Okay. But on your newer trucks, a lot of those also have your GPS tracking in them because they're tracking when the truck's running, when it's off, when it's, in service and all this stuff. And then also the dash cam, because almost every truck out there anymore has dash cams in it. And so those are the big areas that I want data from. But you tell me, Steve, what are you guys seeing? Is there anything else that guys are going to want to at least say, hold on to this data, if nothing else?
Oh, absolutely. I think you hit the main ones all on the head there. Absolutely. My warrants, the way I have them written, or if I do stuff on the private side, that this is the same things I'm looking for. And it's all of the information pertinent to that vehicle's ECM, depending on what the make is. There may be more than one, there might be 3 or 4 modules that we need to deal with, but all of those systems, those EDR systems. You mentioned the ELDs, which, like you said, with the newer trucks now, we're going to electronic.
Thank you for correcting me in my my dyslexia. I always say
EDL.
EDL.
The electronic logging devices. And like you said, unless there's an exemption or it's an older truck or they're running a glider that, specifically they don't have to have an ELD. The fleet, and depending on what the truck is, then a lot of these larger fleets or even the smaller fleets that aren't necessarily an owner operator, one truck, they're having systems that are built in that do all their own fleet management and GPS tracking. And they may have integrated dash cam systems built into those as well. But I also like to look for additional, in my warrants, I'll put additional third-party GPS and dash, because you may have a driver who has GPS built in with his ELD, but he's also running just your old Garmin Nuvi right on the windshield. That, we all know if that thing's turned on, it's recording your, location, speed. I mean, it's recording data. A lot of drivers will have their own dash cameras. I mean, you can get a dash camera for $50 on Amazon, and some of them are incredible quality. And even though the truck itself has a dash cam built into the system, maybe it's a newer Freightliner Cascadia and it's got a great built-in camera system, the driver might have their own, Amazon brand camera slapped on the windshield too. And I want to get that data because those are owned by different people potentially too. That GPS, that Garmin, and that dash cam are probably owned by the driver, whereas the other stuff is probably specific to, the fleet owner or something like that. So I like to mention all of that stuff in there.
One thing to also include in that too, and we're seeing it more and more in Ohio, trailer GPS.
Yes.
So these owner operators are just, they're bobtailing around, dropping loads. They may not own the trailer they're using, but they're going to, load boards at a truck stop somewhere. And a lot of those trailers that are owned by the companies are GPS so that they don't end up in the hills of West Virginia, stripped out, stripped down.
Just so you know, I'm pretty sure when I go to process the video episode in YouTube, they're going to make me put like an actual adult rating on this because you just said the sentence bobtailing around, dropping loads. So I'm just throwing out there. If you guys go to YouTube, there may be a parental advisory on this because YouTube, they're pretty strict about that. But
So I mean, think about that trailer GPS, and for the older trucks, you could have your ELD, but you could also have a standalone Qualcomm system that they're using just for communications between their dispatch center as well. And there's great GPS that Qualcomm, depending on what version they're running, that's great GPS data for the communication. Now you may also, you may end up getting not just GPS position, but you may end up getting transmission communications between dispatch centers and drivers. So there's a ton of data out there in these trucks, not just from a heavy truck EDR stance, but there's just, these are great big mobile offices that are moving, all of our industry around the world, around the country.
Moving millions in freight. Yeah. So people are tracking it. And, but here, I want to take it. I so want to take credit for this, but I can't because I love to sound smart. And you guys will know that this isn't from me because it sounds too smart to be from me. So this is a little shout out to Scott. When we went down to their heavy truck recon class, for the attorneys that are listening, right? The easiest way is when you send out that packet of interrogatories that you just ask all the questions to at the very start of a case, just ask the easy, simple question to the trucking company. What all subscriptions do you pay for all equipment that was operating inside of that truck?
Mm-hmm.
And they'll list, they should list everything that they have a subscription for and that they're paying for. And that will help you kind of decide where you need to ask for information from.
Yeah. And over and above your again, that's going to be over and above your EDR type stuff because they're not paying a subscription for that.
Yeah.
Right. So there's ton of that information. That's transferred or relayed real time on the spot too. I don't know how many truck crashes I have been to for the state police that by the time I got around, responded to the scene and got there was already either a safety manager or somebody from the trucking company was either, if it was a local company, they were already on scene, or they were at least on the phone with the driver. And I was able to talk to them and they said, hey, they're very cooperative and straightforward and said, "Hey, I already know what happened in the crash. I already have the video."
Yeah, it's already back in their office.
When the parameters, the thresholds were set for, a sudden deceleration or something like that triggered the thresholds for the crash sensors, basically to send this data to their email or to their phone, and they're already watching a 10-second snippet of the crash unfold in front of on their phone. From the system itself, they already know what happened, and that data is out there. And it's all in how you approach it too, and how forthcoming they're going to be as far as giving it and providing, especially from a law enforcement side versus when it moves out of the law enforcement realm and into the civil side later on. But that data,
it's interesting
out there.
It's interesting you say that, Steve, because I had on a law enforcement side, I had a commercial crash. It was a heck of a crash.
I thought you were telling the Tesla story. That's my favorite.
It was 2 semis and 3 cars, and the safety manager for the area called into our office. I patched in. He was on his way. The local terminal manager was already out there. Now that safety manager gets out on the scene, has that data that was sent to him electronically. We watched it right there at the scene. He had no problem. He walked up, introduced himself, exchanged cards, and he played that out, logged in, played it out, and then provided the copy of that to us electronically. I mean, we had it that night, probably an hour after I cleared the scene, and it was great, great, great data. And they understand the risk they're running, by coming forth with that information right out of the gate and not, sitting back and talking to their own internal counsel first about how they want to manage that. Do they want to make people ask for it, or do they just want to come, get ahead of it and put it out? And it was great. You're right. I mean, the dash camera, and then there's a couple other camera angles in there, and it told the story. It really did. It was great.
Oh yeah. I've had some most recently, the same thing. Just, it was a local company, and the safety manager was able to come. He came straight forward and was like, "Hey, you want to see it? I actually have the video on my phone already." Yep. And, was able to view it and right there at the scene, and it helped kind of piece a couple pieces, little tidbits that I kind of wasn't certain of the dynamics of how this crash unfolded. That kind of shed some light on it at the scene, which really helped, because now I was able to kind of better document the scene while we were still out there as well.
Yeah. And these companies are smart. They know, number one, there's somebody somewhere that clearly knows that they have, 7-figure liabilities. So somebody's coming after them. There's no question about that. If they get 10% of 7 figures, still decent payday. So they don't care. So they know someone's coming out, do you want to be that trucking company that hides it and says, you didn't ask the right question, and then see how that plays out in a courtroom environment, or you just want to come forward and get ahead of it and put it out? Either way, they're coming after you. It doesn't matter. It's just, how are you going to look, down the road? So they're smart.
And so for our law enforcement friends, though, we'll just throw this little tidbit out there. If a company's playing nice with you, if you're asking for information and they're like, "Yeah, we can get you that, we can provide that information," it would behoove you not to say something along the lines of, "Well, I'm going to prove that this crash was actually as a result of a failure of your vehicle." At that point, the amount of information that they're going to give you, or the rate at which they're going to answer your phone calls, is going to severely diminish.
Now, I know, Eric, you're going to probably have fun with this at some point. And I'm going to cut you off now, because I know what you're going to say is, how does that differ from today? But I'll be honest, for years, anytime I've got a truck crash, people at the scene would believe that I stole the uniform and that I escaped from a padded room somewhere, because I am the dumbest investigator you've ever seen on the planet. What's that? Is that a commercial truck? Oh my gosh, never seen that before.
Yep.
Let the safety managers feel sorry for me and be like, "Oh, look at this guy trying to do this. This is so great."
I know. It's always funny when you go to the scene, because they're all walking around with their arms around Phil and stuff like that, making sure he doesn't trip and hurt himself. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you've seen that, where people have said that, if you've got data, I need it, or I want it, or that is not.
Yeah. Don't be a dick.
No.
Just stop. So here, let's dive into some of these modules. And so Unfortunately, when you get into trucks, it's not going to be this easy. I just found this. I thought this was entertaining. If you have the YouTube episode pulled up, if not, you can roll over to it and check this out. So Ducati making fun of us Americans. I can just see them sitting there in Italy, right? And they're like, these stupid Americans. Literally call their module, if you can see that. Literally call their module a black box. It says right there, Ducati black box, and it's black. So that's like super convenient. But in the trucks, unfortunately, the module is not black typically, nor is it called or labeled a black box.
Right. Yeah.
So one of the things I will caution people on, if you're going after this data, if you're going after the ECM data, right, there is a possibility, especially on like some of the Freightliners, the older Freightliners, things like that. We have seen this where they'll just pull an old computer out of a totaled Freightliner and just toss it right in another Freightliner and get it on the road. So you've got to do some checks to make sure that the module you're downloading actually has data from the truck it's in. You can't just trust it like you do a car.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the big thing with that differs with trucks, like you just, they're a mix and match where you could, they're built the way the client wants the truck. So if I go and I buy my Nissan Titan pickup truck, I'm pretty certain there's going to be a Nissan engine in that thing. Just like when I buy my Ford F-150, there's a Ford engine in there. It's not the same with trucks.
Well, until it falls out of the Ford.
Well, that's true. So, but when I get guys, you
can send the letter of the lawsuit to Phil Relli at.
Yeah, there you go. But we get guys that they'll call me and say, so for the longest time, I was probably the only one in our department that was doing the heavy truck, the heavy vehicle EDR downloads. So they would call me and say, hey, I just had these two vehicles in a crash. One's a Freightliner and one's a Kenworth. Okay, that's great. That doesn't really tell me a whole lot about what I need to know, though. I'm like, we need to know what the engine is. I need to know, get me the VIN. I can run the VIN and see if I can find out what engine is in there, because you could have a Freightliner with different engines. So you could have a Peterbilt with different engines, or a Kenworth with different engines. So
you just stole my thunder. I was just going to ask. I'm pretty sure Kenworth and Phil. I mean, the Kenworth plant's right there next to you. They only make those with one engine, don't they?
No, you can get a Kenworth engine. You can get a number of engines. You jerk. Pay attention to the podcast.
All right, fine.
about the only. Well, I shouldn't even say about the only one that's pretty consistent. It seems like Mack will have a Mack engine in it.
Yeah. Volvo typically seems to have a Volvo engine.
Volvo might have Cummins. I've been lucky with having a Cummins engine in some Volvos, but you're right. Volvo usually has a Volvo. Macks typically have Macks. But outside of that, I mean, they could be mixed and matched, and that's going to depend on how you download or how you image that ECM. And then based off of the year, what type of engine that is, what kind of data you're even going to get. Am I going to get crash specific speed data? Am I only going to get parameters and configuration data for the truck, which may still be useful. It just depends on what the elements of the crash are. I mean, everybody always wants the speed data. We know that. That's the first thing the attorneys ask. How fast were they going? What was the speed? But depending upon, and I've been having more and more of them, it seems like, depending upon the crash, if we're talking about a fatigued driver crash, which we keep getting more of them because, I was told long ago when I first started getting into truck stuff, truck's not making money unless the tires are turning. So, to start driving longer hours and exceeding the federal regulations, they may be able to falsify their logbooks. Obviously, it was easier before ELDs, but there's still ways to cheat the ELDs. We're finding out drivers are quite ingenious in how they can cheat their ELDs.
Well, I heard there's a current attempt coming from the truckers lobby to raise the amount of hours they can drive per day. So,
and the other thing too, that's huge, many years ago when I worked in private fleet, it wasn't so much the number of hours, it was the hours that they're working. Mm-hmm. And that's huge. It's tough. Anybody, and we've all worked shift work. We've all been on that midnight shift. And I'm telling you, Dark 100 is a bad time of night to be driving. It's amazing how fatigued you can become. Even if you you've worked 5 years straight on midnight shift at 4:00 in the morning in the summer, when you start to see a little bit of light coming off in the horizon, a little bit as the sun's thinking about coming up, how all of a sudden exhausted you are.
Oh yeah.
It's amazing. You know, Steve, there was a, Tony and I were talking, and it was kind of interesting to hear. I mean, you've got truck companies that are getting smart now and removing certain data that are no longer tracking data in the modules that we in the reconstruction field.
Well, they're going to track. They're going to track engine parameters and fault codes and stuff, but they're getting rid of the hard brake.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's things that obviously might be potentially detrimental to them in a case that that maybe they don't want that type of information tracked, so that could easily be turned off. I know one of the big ones always has been Caterpillar engines. One of the things for CAT that's specific is it's called a quick stop record, which that's CAT's version of their hard brake or sudden decel record.
Right.
And most of they will come from the manufacturer turned off. So the quick stop is set to 0 usually, which means that it will never activate, which means it never records a quick stop. And it's kind of apparent on the trucking company or the owner to go in, and if they want that turned on. I've probably only seen that enabled a handful of times in my career doing Caterpillars. Usually they are set to 0. Now, it doesn't mean you're not going to get good data, though, because Caterpillar records snapshots, which when you get diagnostic snapshots, I always use the example that guys, when they're asking me about this stuff, is so that truck hits another vehicle and it crushes in the radiator in onto the fan, and the fan stops running and it starts puking out antifreeze all over the road. It may, while the quick stop might be turned off, within 10 seconds, 15 seconds of that crash occurring, the coolant level's low enough that it now throws a fault code because the engine's still running, that the coolant level's low, and it triggers this diagnostic snapshot for that fault code, and it records all that same parameter data. So it will record your speed, RPMs, things like that, and it backs it up. It may back up a minute and 45 seconds. So now your crash was actually caught on the data in a diagnostic snapshot for a low coolant, because that was caused by the crash. So just because we don't have the quick stop turned on, we're still getting crash data. And that goes back to that whole, if there's a vehicle in a crash, you need to get the data. There's never a vehicle where I've said, oh, don't worry about it. I don't bother trying to download the car or the commercial vehicle. Like if it has an EDR, which most vehicles do, you need to be making every effort to get that data, because you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah, I always love the question that's posed to me, and I'm always kind of a jerk when I answer it. At least the tone and inflections when I answer the question, because I love it when they ask it, and because you always get that person. It's like, dude, it's a single vehicle crash, one occupant. Why in the world would you want to image that car? Why do you want the airbag module out of that car? And my response is always the same 2 words: why not?
Hmm? Yep. Why wouldn't you want that information? If it's there, what's it going to hurt to give you that little bit of extra information that might tell you what happened?
And could you imagine, from the law enforcement side, could you imagine going to a suicide where somebody shot themselves and you're like, I'm not worried about collecting the gun. Why bother?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's literally what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but so here, let's clear this up real quick, because, we just talked about hard brakes, sudden stop, sudden decel, stuff like that. So in a truck, right, for people that are new to the truck game and are thinking about getting in trucks, right, the trigger event, that quote unquote trigger for data being recorded in a truck crash, a little bit different than cars, right? Cars, typically, what's our trigger? Right? Some sort of airbag deployment event or a non-deployment event, which typically is as a result of Delta V. Right. That's typically what's triggering it, right? So in a truck, it's just a sudden deceleration is actually your trigger. That's what it's actually tracking, because think about it. If a semi hits a car, what's its Delta V? Typically pretty low. Yeah. So you really can't do Delta V. You got to do the sudden decel.
Right. And it's wheel speed. So when you're looking at that, you're talking about, the range could be, anywhere from, as low as 5 or 7 miles per hour per second up to 9 or, maybe even higher than that, miles per hour per second that it's changing. And these trucks are also recording, they're recording this information in usually second increments. So, I mean, when we're talking about measuring delta V, we're talking very, very short periods of time, whereas in trucks, that's not necessarily the case. But you're right. So for your and every manufacturer has its own terminology. Like I said, Caterpillar, it's a quick stop. Cummins, it's a sudden vehicle deceleration record. Detroit Diesels, it's a hard brake record. So
thanks, Detroit Diesel, for being America. That's the most American record right there. I tell you, right there, right?
Yeah,
hard brake, boom,
hard brake. That's what it is. And those are designed because they want to see how their drivers are driving their vehicles. Are they the type of guy or gal that just drives and driving fast, slams on the brake all the time because they're tailgating people, running lights, whatever the reason might be. But there's a potential that's going to record your collision as well. But this is where it kind of like we said, unlike the CDR data from passenger vehicles, you really have to have somebody that's trained specifically with experience to look through the EDR files, because you could get, even though the hard brake record might be a page or two, the whole record itself might be 100 plus pages of data or more coming off these trucks. And to be able to look at, not only make sure the calibration's correct, so the speed is reporting accurately, and to make sure that other parameters are set. And like you even mentioned, is it even this truck? I've downloaded trucks before where I downloaded the ECM, and the VIN, according to the truck, the VIN on the ECM is not the same VIN or not the same engine serial number, because it was a small mom and pop operation. They needed a truck rebuilt. They slapped an ECM on that was from an old engine, never reprogrammed it. The truck ran, but the data, I'm pulling it from that vehicle. But if I just handed you that report, you'd say, well, the engine serial number is not even right. The VIN's not even the same for this truck. What's up? This isn't even the right report. Well, it might be. We just have to go through and validate all that data.
Yeah, because you see them for sale online all the time, all the time.
Yeah. And what makes trucks a unique animal, and why we keep harping on, you need to get training on how to analyze this stuff. Because just for example, the last crash I just had 3 hard brake events. And when you look at the mileage of where the hard brakes occurred so Detroit Diesels, if I slip up, because typically I'll just call it a D-deck or something like that. Right. So if you look at it and the hard brake event in there, they all happened within it was one hard brake event, 15 miles, another hard brake event. And then that's where the crash happened was on the second event. And then when they left the crash scene, they were driving, and the trooper pulls off on the side of the road and flags them over to follow him. So they had another hard brake event pulling off after the crash.
Okay.
So you have 3 hard brakes within a 50-mile stretch of each other. Mm-hmm. How do you know which one you're looking at?
Right. And that's what it comes down to. You really have to analyze your data and see what you're coming up with. And you mentioned Detroit's Mack, Volvo, and International. The older Max Force engines could also have a last stop record, which I always tell guys. So more so for the law enforcement side of it, because we're the ones that are dealing with it right away, right at the crash scene. But I tell guys, get the keys, turn the truck off, don't move it. Don't do anything to the truck, because depending upon what the model is, you might have a last stop record. So I always use the example of the pedestrian. My Freightliner with the D-deck engine hits a pedestrian and then immediately pulls off the side of the road and stops. Well, we know there's not going to be a hard brake probably clearly not from a velocity change from hitting a pedestrian. But he pulls over and stops, and it's got a Detroit diesel engine in it. That's going to record a last stop record. And every time that vehicle starts to move again, and the wheels turn up to 1.5 miles an hour, and they start moving again, then it'll write another last stop. So that truck all day long is just rewriting last stop records. And if we could have, even though the hard brake data is not there for that pedestrian crash, it might be there for the last stop record, as long as nobody moved that truck from the time that driver hit the pedestrian, pulled to the side of the road, and stopped. And that's why I tell our guys all the time, get the keys, turn the truck off, don't move it. And before we do move it, if it's one of those vehicles, Detroit, Volvos, Max, or Internationals that are going to have that, we either want to drop the drive shaft, or if you have somebody, either what you're doing or your garage guy you trust, to get under there and pull the vehicle speed sensor out of the bell housing on the output shaft or the back end of the transmission.
Mm-hmm.
That way that truck doesn't know it's moving. When they go to tow it, if for some reason the power, because of the crash, maybe the power is still going to the ECM and it thinks it's moving now. Well, if we either drop the drive shaft or we remove the vehicle speed sensor, it doesn't know it's moving. So that last stop record is going to be preserved in those trucks. So when we come back and image it later, we didn't destroy our evidence. And
Right.
I've had cases where that was the case where I downloaded it in the last stop record. It started out where it was 0 miles an hour, and then it got up to about like 6 or 7 miles an hour for about 30, 40 seconds, and then back to stopping. And when I talked to the investigator, they go, "Oh yeah, we moved it off the side of the road because we wanted to get traffic through." Well, guess what you destroyed? You destroyed the last stop record in the truck.
That's when you hand him a OH3 and for us, a witness statement form. You're like, here you go, write out a statement of why you did that.
Yeah, and why you moved it and why you destroyed the only evidence I had on that.
Yep.
That's where states have that quick clear because they're getting money from the federal government for unobstructed lanes and stuff like that.
Which I get
crashes.
it. Open the road, but not at the result of tanking your investigation.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
The investigation comes first. A politician can wait. I'm sorry, they can wait until I have what I need, and then I'll open that roadway.
Absolutely, because that might be
That's probably why I'm not liked, but that's fine.
We can have a whole bunch of those conversations.
Yeah, we'll dedicate a whole show to share some stories of why me and Phil aren't liked. So, another thing too that we just got to touch on real quick here is be careful when it comes to, because you have so many different data sources. So just be aware that if you get your hard brake or any of your stop records from your trucks, from your actual ECM, and then you get your ELD data, I think I like EDL because I think of it like electronic devices that log. See, I just say it in proper English. That's all. And so
whatever works.
No, you don't.
Yeah. So once you get that data, you get your GPS data, you get your camera data, all this, and they all have speeds. Just be aware that the speeds may not line up. You may actually have to kind of shift the graphs a little bit to get the lines to line up on all of them. You may have a little bit of lag in one, all sorts of stuff. So just be aware.
Absolutely.
It's good to have all this data, but the data might just be all over the place.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because so you got to look at where you're recording, or the speeds you're getting, where are they recorded from? So we talked earlier at the very beginning about, EDR data and your reconstruction.
I thought you were going to say EDL. I was so happy I screwed you up.
You have your reconstruction and you get a speed or speed range from that. And then you have your EDR data, and, we kind of compare the two, and which one am I going with? Well, it depends, I guess, on how confident am I, obviously, in my own investigation to start with, which, obviously I'm not putting it on paper unless I'm confident in it. And then looking at my EDR data, but now you're talking about trucks. So the speed from the ECM or the EDR system is reporting from the vehicle itself, from the engine. So now we throw in like a PeopleNet or a ZataNet or a Qualcomm system that's recording speed by GPS. So that speed, even though, we're talking steady state movement, cruising across the interstate, without any significant acceleration or deceleration, is probably going to match up pretty perfect with the EDR data. But now we get into that deceleration, that braking pre-crash, and then we have the crash. So we have a significant reduction in speed during the actual crash itself. Those aren't going to report the same in that deceleration, just by the nature of the way GPS reports and how it calculates speed versus how the EDR data from the ECM calculates speed based off of, pulses per mile of that output shaft of the transmission. So that you're right, they're not going to match up. And it may take a little bit of, you said, kind of like shifting that graph, but just looking at where those data points do line up where they're pretty accurate. And they kind of overlay each other nicely on a speed range. and then just know your limitations. The big thing is know your limitations of what type of speed you're dealing with.
And where it overlays nicely, maybe well before the collision event occurs. You can be, so at that point, what is the speed where those overlay with each other as compared to what you calculated? Because that's one thing that I've seen a lot, especially with Qualcomm or satellite GPS. What's the recycle rate? How often is that pinging? And that's going to come down to service. What the customer's paying for. If they're paying for, I want to know every time a thing moves a foot. That's very expensive.
Right. Well, see, but if it's pinging, what makes me always leery, wary, I don't know, whatever, like leery. suspicious of GPS data is every cop here has gotten a letter of counseling in their personnel file for this. I don't know if your guys' cameras do or not. Our cameras were GPS tracked. So if we exceeded 80 miles per hour, the camera system would automatically come on in the cruiser and then alert supervision that we're exceeding 80 miles an hour.
Anybody who works on the highway hates it.
Yeah. So the problem is, if you know anything about GPS, right, the GPS will be tracking, all of a sudden it'll lose signal and you're going to drive like 100 feet and it'll regain signal. Well, it thinks that it was only out of service for about 1 second. And now you traveled half a mile in 1 second. And so boom, camera kicks on and it reports to the supervisor that I just did about 1,000 miles an hour. And
the Dodge.
Yeah. And they're like, so all of a sudden you're getting a letter of training in your file for exceeding the speed limit without your lights and sirens on. I'm like, I'm pretty sure the cruiser doesn't go 985 miles an hour. Like, pretty sure there was a problem with the system, but again, maybe it's just because I wasn't well liked.
Let's not share that with Pennsylvania, because ours do not do that, and we don't want them to start doing that.
Oh, yeah, it's so annoying. It's so because you constantly have to turn your camera off constantly.
And it's interesting that they do that because they set that threshold, that camera kick on threshold at 80 mile an hour. And I kind of laugh because I'm like, if you work for an agency that is that has interstate or a lot of highway type environment, and you have a big traffic unit or an aggressive traffic group, you are going to have so many files, you as a manager or a division leader, that you're going to have to review. You kind of made your bed, so we are going to help you sleep.
Could you imagine if they did that on our motorcycles, like when you do a presidential escort?
Oh my gosh.
With like the Secret Service. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Phil, why are you going 200? Well, I legit probably was. That's the one time that speed's probably legit.
Yeah, it's crazy why they would do, because you look at, if you're working in interstate, if the interstate speed's 70 mile an hour, if you're turning on a car from a crossover, you're going to trigger right now, and they're going to be like, well, you're running that kind of speed for 4 miles. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Catch up.
So, all right. So let's wrap her up here, because I don't want to beat this horse to too much of a death. And actually we almost did a full hour on just trucks and some of the electronic data in them. So let's wrap this up here with our tips and tricks for everybody here of what they can do, hopefully to get a little bit more out of trucks. So Phil, I'll give you the first word. And Steve, just so you know, me and Phil are going to go first because that's the easier one. And we're going to leave you for last because you're our guest. And that's the hardest one to come up with, because we'll both take the easy ones to give people. So just start thinking now of what tip you're going to give. Go ahead, Phil. I'll let you go first.
Well, obviously, if we're going to speak specifically to trucks, document everything, make, model, the VIN, the whole 9 yards, engine. Get what engine is it in there that's in that truck. And then before you move out of that scene, reach out to an agency. I guarantee, regardless of for law enforcement, regardless of where you work at, there's a big department somewhere that is going to be able to give you some guidance on, hey, don't move that truck, or whatever. Don't let that data get away. Just because it's a big truck, don't be afraid of it. It's just a big car is all it is that does a lot of work. There's so much data, and I think we too oftentimes just walk away from it because we don't know. It's information overload, and it's just easier to claim I didn't know. Do your due diligence.
Yeah. So I'll take the super easy one, because that way I'll force Steve to give us a technical one that'll blow our minds. So yeah, if you're gonna venture into trucks, get training. Right. Yep. And like I said, most state agencies will offer training on trucks because most of the states the DPS agencies, stuff like that, are going to be the agencies that handle trucks. If you're here in Ohio, reach out to almost all of your sheriff's offices have commercial enforcement units, which is, again, if you're not from Ohio, that blows the minds of people in some of the other states I go to when I tell them that sheriffs actually go out and do road patrol, and they're like, what? But yeah, so reach out. Normally the guys will be able to help you out. And then take some of these classes that are available. Again, forensic training group. That's the one that I'm going to recommend just because I know the quality of instruction that they put on. It's fantastic class. So,
and the quality of harassment.
And the quality of harassment. That's true. That's true. You might even see our new logo for 3 Men in a Trailer for our new trucking company that we're going to start up. So we're going to sell Crash Tech. If anybody wants to buy it, let me know, because we're starting a trucking company.
That's a rough week.
Yeah. So, all right, Steve, lay it on us, man. What is something that guys can do or girls can do out here to know a little bit, to gain a little bit of knowledge on truck, maybe make themselves a little bit more comfortable on what's available to them?
Well, I mean, like the big thing, at least, we'll start with even before the crash actually happens. The big thing, like you mentioned, is the training. I always like using that analogy of stay in your sandbox, right? Play in your sandbox. If you don't know something, if you're not trained in something, then don't venture out of that sandbox or that knowledge realm, because that's where you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. So before this crash even occurs, go out and get the training if you have interest. I know heavy trucks are not for everybody. I really enjoy dealing with them, so it's a nice niche. But go out and get the training, because they're kind of an animal of their own. And learn what you're doing with them, both mechanically and then from the EDR download side, because you really need to have both the training to forensically image those vehicles so that you're not overwriting things, putting erroneous fault codes and things like that on the ECMs. So you're getting the most of information that you can be getting it properly, and then having the training to actually look at that and analyze that data. Because there's a lot of it. Some of it might be completely irrelevant to you, and some of it might be the gold that you need in that investigation that might, really help kind of solve where you're going. So training's that big thing. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of good groups out there, got a lot of good training. You mentioned forensic training group. I'm going to throw out, because I teach the forum, as IPTM as well. I'm throwing that one out there.
Now, let me ask you, can guys reach out to you specifically and just hire you to come out, or do they have to go through IPTM or Forensic Training Group?
I mean, if people have questions, they can certainly reach out to me as well. I was throwing out, I think IPTM is a good program as well. But I mean, aside from the state, working for the state police, I do this on the side as well. So, certainly somebody can reach out with questions, or,
I know at some point. At some point, we're going to figure out how to get, what size shirt do you wear? We got to figure out how to get you a Crash Tech shirt over there.
I'll take a large. I'll wear that. Next podcast, I'll have my large Crash Tech shirt on.
Yes. All right. Deal.
There's resources out there for training. Go
absolutely after. Tons of resources. So get trained, and even a lot of the because we're dealing with the manufacturer's software for a lot of these. There's training available to specifically deal with Detroit Diesel through their own company for Cummins.
Bendix has a ton of training for free.
Bendix has some great training. And then we haven't even mentioned, but Centercon Technologies is a whole nother third-party system that is used to download some makes and models of commercial vehicles. That's another great system. So there's training out there that's available. Just reach out and get the training, so that when the time comes, when you have the crash, you can deal with it appropriately. And then when that crash actually happens, like I mentioned earlier, don't move the truck. The biggest thing, if it's for the crash reconstructionist, if you're not at the scene yet, I always tell my patrol guys, get the keys from the driver, because we're going to need the keys when we image it anyway. Don't move the truck, turn it off. And until you figure out what's going on with that truck, what type of engine it is, and what's going on with the crash, we don't want to move it, because you could potentially overwrite and destroy, what might be your really vital evidence in this whole case, just because we didn't know what it was. And then from there, really, it's just again, reach out to somebody that's trained. If you're a law enforcement agency that's not familiar with trucks, reach out to another agency. In Pennsylvania, we have a lot of municipal departments that don't do reconstruction, nor do they deal with commercial vehicles, and they reach out to myself or some of our other reconstructionists in the state and ask for the information and advice. Where do I go from here? Can you help me with this? Can you send me a sample of a search warrant? Who's best to deal with this? And then we kind of talked a lot about the trucking companies earlier. They're a great resource too. I have had, what's the saying, you gather more flies with honey than you do vinegar. I have had great luck just being polite and respectful and dealing with the safety managers or fleet managers or the trucking company owner and explaining, hey, we're just doing investigations. This is the stuff I need to get one way or another. And, if we have to go the search warrant route and take the long way and I have to impound your truck for weeks on end, we're going to do that. Or, we can do things a little easier. And a lot of times that works out great. Same with if I don't know what the system is. There's lots of GPS fleet management systems and ELD systems that way more than one person can really be familiar with all of them. So who's going to be best? Who's going to be best, capable of telling you how to use that ELD? It's going to be the driver or the fleet manager. And
right.
A lot of times if we just ask them nicely, they'll certainly help us out. So, use that as a resource out there. The big thing is just we want to get the data off these trucks, or any vehicle for that matter. But these trucks hold a wealth of information that might be useful in your crash, and you don't ever want to let that just go untapped. So,
yeah.
And I think
let me ask you this real quick, because this will trigger a funny story. Hold on, Phil. Let me ask this. No. So to talk about training, I will tell you the importance of training, because you're dealing with professional drivers when you come up to trucks, and you guys either confirm or deny this. If you don't know what you're talking about and you're not comfortable around a truck, nobody is going to tell faster than that driver. And he is going to pick up on the fact that you know nothing about what you're talking about or looking at. And they will just toy with you. They will toy with you on the side of the highway. So if you're an FTO, let your cadet stop a truck real quick and talk to the driver and just kind of, sit back and chuckle for a little bit before you step in and save them. But, it's funny to watch,
especially your old school drivers that could probably rebuild their engine on the side of the road if they needed to. They will know real quick if you have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Yep. And they'll make you feel about that big.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's going to wrap it up for the day, guys. As always, if you have a case that you want us to review for free, or you just want to connect with us, jump on over to crashtechreconstruction.com. Also, remember to follow us on Facebook at Crash Tech, the Expert Angle Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Crash Tech Reconstruction Services. And finally, remember to always leave your accident victims better off than you found them, because at the end of the day, everything we do is for them.